Hola, this is a quick video over a new grammar concept in Spanish. It can be a little tricky because the English language doesn't exactly work the same way here. This is the concept of masculine versus feminine. Starting out with the most basic, like in English, when talking about living beings, we differentiate with the gender. So for example, in Spanish, we have the word niño, child, and niña. In the Spanish language, the ending O represents masculine, while the ending A represents feminine. So in this case, we would know that niña is a girl and niño is a boy. It's not a separate word. The base word is niño, and then you convert it to the feminine form by changing the O to an A. So we will learn all gender-related words first in the masculine form, and then simply apply the change and easily be able to do them in the feminine form. We also have words like adulto, an adult. If I say adulto in Spanish, every Spanish speaker would know that that adult is a male. If I were to say adulta, a female adult. We could have viejo. Okay. El viejo could be the old man. La vieja would be the old woman. Okay, we have other words like chico, in the feminine form, chica. And we do have an exception to all this. Hombre, meaning man, and mujer, woman, that's actually a separate word. That's more in line with what English does for gender. But the rule in Spanish is a word for a person ends in an O. That means it's about a male. And if you change that ending to an A, now it is about a female. This is the main idea of masculine and feminine that actually matches up with English, in that we're talking about living creatures. Okay, even with animals, you have a gato, which is a cat. If you care about the gender of a cat, I imagine most people don't. I look at a cat and I think a cat's a cat. I don't usually wonder about its gender, but you could, of course, investigate, I guess, and find out that it is a gata. Okay, this kind of makes sense because English does the exact same thing. These are living creatures that can reproduce and obviously have gender. If it stopped there, Spanish gender would be a very easy concept, but it is not. The concept of masculine versus feminine also extends to nouns. People, places, things, and ideas. In Spanish, those words are masculine and feminine too. This comes from Latin. Spanish branched off of Latin, and the Latin language had used gender grammar throughout, and so does Spanish. So to start with, we have the word the. There are 4 different ways to say the in Spanish. El, la, los, and las. Why 4 different ways? Because of the way Spanish changes depending on who or what you are talking or writing about. So while they all mean the, in Spanish, el is used as the masculine singular form. La, the feminine singular. Los, the masculine plural. And las, the feminine plural. So some of the vocabulary we've learned early in the year, such as classroom objects, we have a word like el libro, a book. We have a word like la pluma, the pen. While in English, we don't think of gender when talking about objects. Obviously, they don't reproduce. In Spanish, this uses the concept of gender. It's called masculine and feminine, but of course, it's not really about reproduction. It's simply masculine in Spanish when you're talking about objects means you use el, and feminine means you use la. So el libro is a masculine object. La pluma, the pen, is a feminine object. Not because men are more likely to use books and women are more likely to use pens, but simply because the word book in Spanish has el and the word pluma has la. Objects made plural in Spanish, as discussed in a previous video, el became los. So los libros, the books. La became las, so las plumas, the pens. But here still we have gender. The books are male, so los is another masculine form for the. Las is another feminine form. Possibly the easiest way to learn this is simply when students come into the room and there are new vocabulary words on the board, for example, such as el parque from our current list. They don't necessarily need to think, oh, that's a masculine word. As they're writing it down, I will have the word the right next to it. So they are always seeing el parque in the masculine form. They're never going to have to make a decision about whether it's el or la. Not going to ever see la parque or hear la parque. Is it possible to make a mistake on a test? Of course, but we will always be seeing it and writing it in the correct form already. So a lot of times students just pick this up automatically because the word goes right with it. Are there some shortcuts to maybe guess at it if you're not sure? Yes, it's that same O and A rule earlier. So el libro, a word that ends in O, is masculine and has el, whereas la pluma ended in A and has la. Now that shortcut does not work 100% of the time. I would say 98 to 99% of the time. There are some exceptions, and we are not going to worry about those exceptions right now. So as far as we're concerned, that is a good rule to use right now if you can't remember which version of the goes with the noun. Okay, this creates a scenario where we're now not only thinking of gender for people, but also objects. If it stopped there, it also wouldn't be that complex. You just have that extra step of figuring out which version of the to use, but it doesn't. Masculine versus feminine grammar extends to adjectives in the language and any other descriptive words. Those are all masculine or feminine too. And they can also be plural. Basically, the concept in the language is all descriptive words have to agree or match up with the noun that they're describing. So in the example below, we have the word tall. Okay, I will be teaching students one version of tall, alto, for memorization purposes. They will then need to know how to convert that to all the different forms. There are four of them. Alto, which we memorized, alta, altos, and altas. What are those four forms? Well, alto is the masculine form in the singular. So there's one tall male. Alta is the feminine word in the singular, one tall woman. Make it plural. Altos is the masculine form in the plural, while altas is the feminine form in the plural. So that means if you are talking about two women and you want to say both of them are tall, you would need to use altas because that matches up with who you're describing. You're describing two people, so we have an S, and they're women, so we've changed the O to an A using the feminine form. You're talking about two men, it would be altos. There's more than one, we add the S. We do not make it feminine. Okay? You're talking about one woman, it's alta. We simply change the ending to express the correct gender. If you're wondering, what about when men and women are in the same group? The masculine form also acts as the mixed form. So if there is a group of men and women, regardless of the breakdown, it is not like democracy, it is not majority rule. It is if there is at least one man, you use the masculine form. So if there's a group of 99 women and one man, and they are all tall, we would use altos. The feminine form, altas, only gets used when everyone in that group is female, or if it's a list of objects, this would also extend to that concept. This leads us to a format we'll be practicing here shortly as students start to learn adjectives in which they translate sentences. So here we have some adjectives listed with their opposites. We have alto, tall, so bajo is short, gordo, fat, delgado, thin, rico is rich, pobre is poor, guapo, handsome or beautiful, and feo, ugly. This is the way we will memorize adjectives with their opposites, since when people see someone or see something, they generally think of the two polar opposites to describe a certain physical aspect of them. So I think it will help students to learn them together. So we have here, Fernanda is short, thin, and rich. Students will see a word bank like this and have to figure out, first off, which words do they mean, and then, am I using it correctly? So Fernanda is short. The word short is bajo. Thin. The word thin is delgado. And rich, rico. However, when I go to write it, Fernanda, who is a girl, I need to use the feminine form. So it's not bajo. That would be describing a male. It's baja, delgada, y rica. If English did this, or an idea like this, we would basically saying Fernanda is shorta, thinna, and richa. And we'd have to have an A or something to that effect to indicate, oh, I'm talking about a woman. The English language does not do this. So a lot of times what happens is not that students have a hard time learning what the change is, they simply forget to do it because they have 13, 14 or more years of experience of never changing adjectives. Tall is tall, rich is rich. And in Spanish, there are 4 versions of most every adjective. Okay, here, Rodrigo. Rodrigo is fat, handsome, and poor. Okay, Rodrigo is a guy, and he's one person. So we don't actually have to change the adjectives. They're the way we memorize them as we memorize the masculine singular form. Rodrigo es gordo, guapo, y pobre. However, when we get to Carlos and Pedro, we are going to have to make some adjustments. They are male, and this is the male form, but there are 2 of them. So this would be a plural sentence. Carlos y Pedro son. Okay, I look, where's tall? It's alto, but I'm talking about 2 men, and in Spanish, adjectives have to agree with who you're describing, so it's altos. Y feo is ugly, feos. Again, students don't necessarily have a struggle realizing that this is the rule or what to do, but when they go to do it, their English knowledge of many years interferes and doesn't want to change a word like tall or ugly. Okay, if English did this change, it would be like saying Carlos and Pedro are talls and uglies. Okay, the English language simply doesn't do it, so many times English learners, their brains will reject it or just forget, and that's something we have to slow down and realize that different languages have different rules. Final sentence, Susana y Maria. Okay, so we have 2 people here, so we're going to add the S. Oh, but Susana and Maria are both women, so I take the word guapo, which is for 1 male. That's the word I memorized. That's the word I find in the list, and I realize, oh, that's not correct. There are 2 people. I better add that S. Wait, it is still not correct because that would be a group of men. We need to change that O to an A. Guapas y pobres. Notice on this last one, I did not put an A here. That is because the rule for masculine to feminine, as mentioned earlier, is changing the letter O to the letter A. Notice one adjective in our list does not end in an O. So pobre cannot be made feminine. There's no gender version of it. There's simply a singular form, pobre, and a plural form, pobres, whereas your other words, such as feo, has a singular masculine, then it has a singular feminine, then masculine plural, then feminine plural. Okay, this concept of masculine and feminine, to review, occurs with people. Objects also have masculine and feminine, and then any word describing those people or objects also has to be adapted. Since this is grammar that doesn't occur in English, the main struggle is remembering to slow down and to attempt to make these changes.